We are going to continue a series today called Passion. We've been talking about some important things, two things that are important in life. One is your purpose, but the other one is your passion. And sometimes here's what we see in the church world. We do a lot with purpose, meaning this is why we were made. This is what our purpose is. That's super important. If you don't know what that is, then you don't even know why you're doing what you do. You don't even know what the goal line is. But we've also found this, and I found this, that the passion behind the purpose is just as important. I don't know if you mean. Purpose is in your head, right? It's what you know. But passion is in your heart. It's your feelings. It's that overwhelming enthusiasm, emotion, or conviction that drives you to your purpose. And what we found is a lot of times people haven't lost their purpose, but they've lost their passion a little bit. And so in this series, we've been talking about how do you get it back if you lost it? What do you do if there's passion blockers in your life? Did you know that? Don't look at them, but you know. But there's passion blockers in life, and we talked about, hey, how do you get rid of some of those blockers? And then we talked about a habit that you could even practice every day that would instill passion in your life. And then finally, last week, we talked about what is God passionate about? And you know what it is? People. Which can be very difficult. And then we talked about what is the motivation. So if you missed these, you can go back and listen to it. Newbranch.net is our website, and we will have CDs. Open, who makes our CDs, is on vacation. We're a little jealous right now of that. But anyway, we'll have some CDs available as well, so you can pick those up at the Welcome Center, and please do that. Today, though, we're going to talk about how do you keep your passion? What happens as you get older? What happens as life, it's not just an age thing, because you could experience some difficult things in life at any age, and here's what I know. What happens when you experience life and you go, how does it keep going? Because sometimes the passion wanes as you go. Is that true? I think about even starting this church. We're 7 years old now, and I wanted to show you a picture of our launch team when we first started. I got a picture of us, and here we are when we first launched. This is what we look like. Yeah, I'm in that picture. I'll let you decide. I'm not Wonder Woman, just so you know. I don't want to hear that. My wife is, okay? That's what my wife used to look like, and still does. My wife still looks the same, so when you see her, that's what she looks like. I don't look the same anymore, but, hey, I'm in that picture. You can figure out who I am in it. But that's what we look like. That's how we felt when we started. We felt like that, okay? It was absolutely awesome. And now, after 7 years, here's what we look like. Okay. Take a minute. And now you recognize this, right? You're going, hey, now I do know you, okay? You're there somewhere, okay? And but how many people feel like that? Hey, when you start, when you're young, you go, man, I feel like a superhero. I feel like I got passion and zeal for life. Maybe you don't look like these things, but you go, but I do feel that way. And then after time, you start to feel a little bit like this. And you go, how do I get my passion back when I feel like this, when life happens to me? Because after a period of time, some things happen. And today, we're going to look at an ancient story in the Bible that's going to help us. But what I want to do is I just want to give you a couple things. You can write these in the margin, and then I want to unpack that with the story that we're going to talk about today, okay? So just write these in the margin. That we don't have them up on the screen, but they're just a couple things that you can write down. The reason why it's difficult as you get older or as you experience life, I don't want to get hung up on age, because it's not about, you could be 18 years old and be an old soul because things have happened to you. So please don't think it's age. But here's the thing. As you go in life, the reason why it's more difficult to keep your passion as you get older is because you have a past, right? You know why younger people aren't struggling? Because they don't really have anything, right? They're young and they're zealous, and they can go because they've never experienced some of the things you do. And along the way, because you have a past, you pick up some things, right? Maybe you made a mistake and now you got some regret. That's hard, right? What do you do with that? Or vice versa. You go, I got some regrets. I wish I hadn't done this, and now it's very hard, and it kind of starts to kill your passion, because every time you get ready to move forward, you're like, no, but my past is holding me back. Or it could be resentment, right? That's not just what you did, but it's something somebody did to you, and now I got a resentment, and I really can't go, and it really crushes my passion. Maybe that's what you've been living with. That's one piece. The other piece is this, is as you get older, you used to be like the first picture, but now you're kind of like this, and you were cool at one time, and now you're not, and you start to compare, and it's kind of like, hey, now it's kind of out with the old and in with the new, and you realize, well, I thought I was new. And then you realize, no, I'm not. There's other people that are newer. And I see that even as a pastor. I got a good friend that started a church right down the street, Thomas Steele Carr, and he's a great friend of mine. And what I see in the church trends today, like he's very trendy, and I realize now I'm not. I don't know if I ever was, but I'm definitely not as trendy as him. And so there's this new thing where these guys are wearing skinny jeans, and And so as I start to look at conferences, I'm like, man, people are doing it. So I'll go to the store one day with Marie and I try on some. And she's like, there ain't nothing skinny about that. I said, no, not going there, right? Let's just get off the fashion train because I'm just going to tell you, it ain't going to work. I mean, it doesn't work. And you can be super glad that I didn't try that, right? Because why? Because an old person trying to look young doesn't work, right? And I'm not that old, but it happens, right? And so you're going, what in the world? Why does that happen? Because we start to compare ourselves. And I love Thomas Steele, and nobody's putting it down because some of these guys, they look really cool. Awesome, good for them, but it doesn't work for some of us. Please don't do that, okay? Some of you guys, don't be trying to do it. We've seen you. All right. You get the idea, right? You start to compare to other people, and it's not going to work for you. It just doesn't work. The last thing that I see is this, is that as you get older, it hurts, right? You see, the problem with younger people is this. It's not that they're bad or anything. It's just that you're young and dumb. I mean, we've all been there, right? And the reason why you're willing to charge the field, this is one of the reasons why they go ahead of us a lot of times. They're willing to charge out because life hasn't hurt yet, right? But as you go, life tends to hurt. I mean, physically, but even more, right? I mean, it's like the emotional hurts and the baggage that you get and the stuff that hurts, and then all of a sudden in your life, you get fear. And they don't understand it because they've never had it smack them upside the head. They will, but they haven't felt that yet. I think of the movie Top Gun. I don't know if anybody has watched that, and that's getting to be an older movie, I get it. But in the movie Top Gun, the guy was young, and he was this pilot, and he was the most awesome pilot on the planet. Tom Cruise, I can't believe he played it, but anyway. But you get the idea. And so he plays this young pilot that's just amazing, you know, and he's just got all this arrogance, and he'll try anything. He's not afraid of nothing until he gets in an accident and his friend dies, remember? And when his friend dies, now all of a sudden he's got a little fear. He's got a little jitter, and now he don't have the edge anymore. That's what it's like. Anybody got that? And so now all of a sudden, when you go into battle, you're not so apt to do it. You're going to shrink back because there's a little bit of fear. And today we want to talk about that because I got a feeling for some of us, this could be the life-changing moment that you need. And today we're going to take a look at a story in the Bible. We've shared it before. It's been a couple years. But it's one of my favorite stories in all the Bible because it's changed my life. And I'll tell you about that in a minute. But it's found in the book of Joshua. If you'll turn with me to Joshua chapter 14, we covered a piece of this story a few weeks ago when we talked about Joshua, but today we're going to take a look through the lens of Caleb. And here's what it says. Joshua chapter 14 and verse 7. If you got your outlines, pull them out because I'm going to ask you to circle some things. It says this, I was 40 years old when Moses, the servant of the Lord, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to explore the land. I brought him back a report according to my convictions. So I want to just pause here on this verse just a minute, and I want you to circle one thing. Circle the word convictions. Today we're talking about passion. That's what this word means. I brought him back a report based off of the passion that God had given me, the conviction that God had given me. You see, it's a little bit more than just emotion. Now, let me explain what has happened so far as we come here. So we're talking about Caleb. You might not even know who he is if you hadn't been around for a while. So let me just kind of back the story up. Moses was called to be God's deliverer, to get the children of Israel from Egypt to the promised land in ancient times. If you haven't heard that story, that's okay. You can read about it in the book of Exodus. And so what happens is that the children of Israel have been slaves for 400 years, and God calls Moses and says, hey, deliver my children of Israel from there. You're going to be the leader. He's 80 years old, and he goes down there, and he tells Pharaoh, let my people go. This might help you. And Pharaoh says no, and then God sends plagues, and then he delivered the children of Israel. And then it takes them 2 years to travel from Egypt to the promised land, the land that he had given their forefather Abraham. And now there are about 2 million people, and along the way they get the 10 Commandments, just to kind of give you an idea of where we're at historically. Then as they get to the promised land, they come to a place called Kadesh Barnea, which is it's their entry point to coming into the land. It's God, the way God chose, and I believe it comes right up against the Jordan River. And so as they come into the promised land, or right before, Moses says, hey, what I want you to do is we're going to pick 12 spies, one from each tribe. If this sounds familiar, because a couple weeks ago we told the same story, but I want to look at it from a different lens. And he picks 12 spies, one from each tribe, and they go and they spy out the land to tell him, hey, what is the lay of the land? What is it like? And they come back, and the 12 spies, they say, well, it's exactly what God said, that the land is flowing with milk and honey, which means the vegetation is huge. They bring back, grapes the size of basketballs, this kind of stuff, and they're like, it's just like God said. But the descendants of Anak are there. Now, that might not mean much to you unless you do church history or have studied the Bible a lot or you're just an ancient historian. But the descendants of Anak were almost mythological. They were real people and Anak was a real person, but it was believed that they were part of the Nephilim, which are basically, they considered the Nephilim almost like demigods. If you've watched Clash of the Titans, you kind of get what they would think that a Nephilim was like. That they were blessed by the gods, or in Israel's case, they believed that they were blessed by demons, that it was a very demonic thing. There's a reason why they had these huge warriors, these huge demonic warriors that were big. Later on, the descendants of Anak become, one of them is Goliath, if you know that in the Bible. That's just a side note, just so you kind of get the idea. And so they're these huge warriors. They saw them, and they come back and they say, we're like grasshoppers compared to them. They're just huge. And not only that, but they have the hill country. They have the high ground. They're fortified in their cities, and they will destroy us. And they're afraid, and rightly so, humanly speaking. They're right. They're like, well, we thought we were coming to the promised land, and we thought there won't going to be any more problems anymore. Anybody ever thought that? We got to the promised land, but we realized, oh, there's somebody occupying the promised land. There's an obstacle in the way. And so it is what God said, but there's a problem. And then Caleb spoke up and said, wait a minute, guys, you're absolutely right. The Anakites are there. I saw them too. They're every bit as big as you said. But here's the thing. God has delivered us this far. This is what Caleb said at 40 years old. He comes back and he says, guys, we believe that God will deliver us again. We were slaves in Egypt, all of us. And we know what God can do. And we're here today, and we believe that God can do this, and I think we should believe him. And Joshua was 20 years old, and he stood beside Caleb. He didn't say anything, but he stood beside Caleb, who made the big thing. I'm going to do this. But the people got so upset and so afraid that they started to become illogical. Have you ever seen anybody do something illogical, like with a rational fear? Fears can make you do all kinds of things. If you get to somebody's phobia of fear, you'll see that during Halloween. Don't mess with them, right? Don't mess with my wife. She'll hurt you, right? I mean, if you scare her, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of the angry man. Be afraid of the scared man, right? Because I'm telling you, the scared person can hurt you really bad. And so what happens? They come there and they say, hey, here's what we're going to do. We're going to kill Caleb, Joshua, and Moses. This was their plan. And then we're going to go back to Egypt. You see how irrational it is? We're going to go back to slavery, even after Pharaoh tried to kill us. We'll go back. That's why I'm saying, when you get in this mode, there's no logic to it, but that's where they were. They were just so frantic, and they were about to kill Caleb, Joshua, and Moses when God stepped in and said, enough. He said, you guys don't believe me. And so here's what you're going to do. You guys are going to march around the wilderness for 40 years while you all die off, and then your kids will come back here to Kadesh Barnea, right, this spot. And then they're going to go in, and they'll occupy the land, just like I said. I'll love you, I'll forgive you, I'll take care of you, but you're not going into the promised land. Now, let me explain what they did, because if you got teenagers, you'll love this. This is Numbers 13 and 14 if you want to look it up later. But here's what happens when they go in. They actually decide that hey, we're not, oh, well, now that you said we can't. Does this sound like a teenager? Now you said we can't. Well, now we want to. So what do? They gather up an army, and they go into the promised land, and they get their clocks cleaned. They never made it to the Nephilim. They never got to the Nephilim, right? I mean, they got destroyed, and several of them died, and then they went and they said, you know what, maybe it's a good idea that we follow God, and they marched around the wilderness for 40 years as they all died off. And God said, you'll all die except for two, Caleb and Joshua, because they believed me. And this is what he's talking about. 40 years ago, this is what happened. And then they come back to this spot in Kadesh Barnea. And then God, we talked about a couple weeks ago, then God said, hey, Moses is about to die. I need to select a new leader right here in Kadesh Barnea that's going to lead them into the promised land. Who's that going to be? Now, I'm going to tell you, I want you to think about some do's and don'ts today from the life of Caleb. Now, I'm not saying he did this, but I'm saying it would be very easy for somebody to take this approach. As Caleb comes back, guess how old he is 40 years later? 40 plus 40 is 80. Guess how old Moses was when God called Moses? 80. And now the person who spoke up, God is about to select the new Moses. And guess who might feel, I'm not saying he did, guess who might feel like maybe it should be me, since I was the one that spoke up, after all. But he didn't pick Caleb. He picked Joshua. Excuse me? Anybody ever had that slight? Anybody ever had somebody pick over them? Wait a minute, I'm 80, Moses was 80, I did my time, I'm the oldest. In fact, he's the oldest person left. How dare you pick Joshua, right? And now he's coming, and it's been 5 years. This is where we're at in this story. And I want to pay attention to where we're at, because if he had taken that attitude, how dare you, God, and he had held on to a resentment, he would never get to do what we're going to talk about next. Some of us are right there, right? You've been overlooked. Maybe you're at a job. You ever had that happen at your job where it's like, I thought I was due for the promotion, and somebody else got it. Or the company decided to go in a different direction. Or the church decided a different style. Or I can't wear skinny jeans. You get the picture. You get it. This is where he's at. And he's coming to Joshua, and let me tell you what he's asking Joshua for. It's been 5 years now since they entered the promised land. And they have literally ran out all the people, and now they're dividing up for the inheritance. And he's coming to have to ask Joshua for his family's inheritance. How you feel, right? You got a resentment? Let me tell you something. You won't ask. Let me tell you something. You will miss the blessings of God as long as you have a resentment. It's true. Or regret, for that matter. It's Satan's greatest tool to sidetrack you. See, because you won't want to ask. You'll go, I ain't going to ask Joshua. I don't like him. Right? You've already built up a case for the last 5 years going, God should have selected me. And after all, you made some mistakes, Joshua, and Joshua did. But they had driven him out, and they had done some things. And now we're going to see how he responds. Verse 8. But my fellow Israelites who went up with me made the hearts of the people melt in fear. So he's remembering back. I, however, followed the Lord my God wholeheartedly. Now, I want to tell you something, because I do get the spirit of Caleb here. I don't know Caleb much because there's not much written about Caleb. But here's what I want to tell you. If he had resentment, he couldn't have done this. You see, a person with resentment can't look at the past that way, because they're not going to want to be vulnerable with somebody like Joshua. You were there too, Joshua, and he's able to say, here's where God has blessed me. If you want to overcome your regrets and resentment, and you want to keep your passion, how do you keep your passion? I can tell you. You overcome resentment and regret by celebrating what God has done for you and for other people. This is big. Let me tell you what. If you're stuck in regret and resentment, you can't celebrate. That's a great indicator. You can't celebrate what God is doing in the lives of other people. It's true, right? Try it one time. If you got a resentment, try to celebrate, well, I have a resentment against Joshua, and then try to celebrate something good that happened in Joshua's life. It's the creepiest thing you'll ever see, isn't it? You ever tried it? It's like the most weirdest thing. And then what you really want is you want that person to stumble, and then you secretly celebrate their failure, right? That's a good indicator that you got a problem with regret and resentment. And I know he didn't, because he didn't say anything bad about Joshua. He's going, hey, this is a story we have in common, Joshua. You remember when God did this? He's remembering the past. He's remembering the past, but here's what I see in Caleb's life. He's not stuck there. I'm 85 years old, and he's not stuck in the past. He's remembering it, and he's celebrating what God had done, and that's all that he's doing here. So important to our lives. If you're stuck there, you overcome it by starting to celebrate. You may not always feel like celebrating. You celebrate first, and then the feelings will start to come. Believe me, I've tried this. It works. It works if you work it, I'm telling you. Okay, verse 9. So on that day, Moses swore to me, the land on which your feet have walked will be your inheritance and that of your children forever, because you have followed the Lord my God wholeheartedly. Verse 10. Now then, just as the Lord promised, he has kept me alive for 45 years since the time he said this to Moses, while Israel moved about the wilderness. So here I am today, 85 years old. I want you to underline two things. Underline the Lord promised and circle the word old. Nobody likes that, do you? Old. He's 85 years old. God has done this in my life. What I want you to see here is, here's the principle that I want you to see. He is focused on God's promise, not on comparing himself to somebody else. If he did, he wouldn't have been able to say this to Joshua. He would have bypassed it. That's what he didn't do. So here's the point, is overcome comparing. Because I got to tell you, what is the most dangerous thing you could ever have in your life is comparing to someone else. Overcome comparing by concentrating on what God's promised you. A lot of times people are losing their blessings because here's the thing. The greatest enemy to your success, can I tell you what it is? Sometimes we say other people's success. We'll get to that in a minute. Right? I mean, sometimes we say the greatest enemy of today's success is yesterday's success, but the truth is the greatest enemy of today's success is other people's success. Because I was feeling pretty good about myself until I saw somebody else, right? I was feeling pretty good about my Honda when I bought it until Rolly drives up with his Porsche, right? And he comes into our family and he just ruined my life, okay? Right? I was happy, but now I'm not happy. Why? Because I'm comparing to someone else. And I got to tell you, as long as you're doing that, it's going to destroy your happiness. Why is that? Why are you not happy? Because you're comparing to someone else, and God never made you someone else. A great passage of Scripture, you can write it down. Matthew, you can go back, we're not done yet. Matthew chapter 25 is the parable of the talents. You can go back and read it, and you'll see that at the end of time, as God brings, that's what Matthew 25 is, it's talking about the end, and as God judges the world, here's the standards in which he judges, and he compares people, and he says it's like a master who gave people money. He gave one 10 talents or 10 bags of gold. Another one he gave 5. Another one he gave 1. The whole point, I'm not going to go into the whole story, but here's the point. He didn't give everybody the same. Can I tell you something? He gave one person 25 years. He gave one person 85 years. He gave one person 30 years. We already know there's not equality, right? It doesn't feel that way. And God has his own judgment for you. Stop comparing yourself to someone else. And see, you're never going to be happy as long as you're doing that. Well, they got to do this, and I had to go to Zuni, right? You know, I'm just playing. I love Zuni. But I missed out on you guys a few weeks, so I have to get it back on. Okay. The greatest enemy is other people. You see, don't focus on other people. And I want to pause here because I've been feeling this, and I don't know if I'm going to word this correctly or not, but I can't worry too much about that because it is something that I feel is a barrier that's going to destroy us, comparing. And especially for those that are old. Let me explain what I mean. It's not a matter of age. When I say old, what I mean is those of you that have been bypassed, those of you that feel like, hey, they're not doing it the way that I would, or I don't know that I have value anymore. There's a trend in the church world today that says this, out with the old and in with the new. Anybody seen that trend? It's there if you didn't know. And there's 2 reasons for it, but I want to focus on a piece of it. See, the reason it's there is this: is that there's 2 reasons. One is this: is that younger people are willing to bolt out faster. Okay, that's one reason. And some people as we get older, we get kind of set. But the reason for it is that some of us, as we get older, what we've decided is we go, well, fine, if they're just going to overlook me, if they're just going to cast me out, and believe me, there's a lot of hurt that comes along with this. I've been doing this for 45 years, right? You heard this? I've been doing this for 45 years, and now they just don't care about me. That's a shame. It's because they're young and dumb, honestly. But here's the problem. The older people have taken the attitude, well, then I'm just out. I'm just going to sit. And some of the greatest warriors are sitting the battle out. And I got to tell you something today. It's your fault because you're focused on the wrong thing. Well, that's not how we did it. That's not what right? But you're missing the point. And I know it hurts, and I know some of you guys got deep wounds, and I know I'm going to a sensitive area, but the problem that I see is this, is we need the greatest warriors on the battlefield, and unfortunately, they're sitting the battle out, and it's time to change our mind. And what we got to do is we got to stop comparing. See, it's not about how big it is. It isn't about how trendy you are. It isn't about whether you can wear skinny jeans or not. Don't pick on them because they do, though, okay? Don't take that old bitter spirit. Let me say something. If anybody had the right to be bitter, it was Caleb. How dare God choose this young guy? Who does he think he is? I was in Egypt as an adult. I know what it's like to be a slave, and I'm the only one that knows. He didn't take the bitter epilogue. You know what he did? He goes, I'm going to just ride out my time over here. This is why I know he didn't take it. Because when the time came for the greatest fight that faced the nation of Israel, do you know that this is the greatest fight that there was? And they saved it for last. You see, his inheritance, Caleb's inheritance that God gave him, was the hills of the Anakites, where Anak's descendants were left. They had waited 5 years because all of them were terrified of the Anakites. I believe part of it was because of the demonic possession of these people, that no one wanted to go to Demon Mountain. You get it? And Caleb recognized something. He's like, you can lead, Joshua, but this one is mine. And unfortunately, what we have today is this, is we have some church people who have gotten hurt over time, and styles have changed, and things have changed, and people get hurt, and they're doing different things, and some of it turns us off or whatever, I don't know. But the point is this, is that some of us have decided, well, then I'm out then, and I'm just going to sit this one out, and we're just going to forward up till he comes. And I'm telling you, if you do that, you're going to miss out on the greatest thing, and your passion has just went down, and we become angry, bitter people with an angry, bitter epilogue. And you have done great things in your life, but the problem is this, is you're comparing what somebody else's blessing is, and you're destroyed by that when God is saying, but you don't understand. I have prepared you for this moment. This moment by doing what? Here's how I know. Here's what he did. I am focused not on what people say. I'm focused on God's promise. God promised me this hill country. This hill country is mine, and I will not let my regrets and my resentment and my past and my hurt and whatever else keep me from the promises of God. That's what it is. You see, somebody here today needs this, and you need to write this down, that you are not who people say you are. You see, somebody criticized you, and that's why you're out, right? I get you. Maybe they criticized you harshly. I understand. Maybe they said things that were untrue. Maybe they said things that were true and it hurt your feelings. I get you. They just don't understand. You see, they picked on your regret and they just pummeled you with it, and now you are who people said you are, and Satan is doing his greatest battle by saying that's who you are, and you're defined by it. You see, you're not who people say you are. You're not even who you say you are. Because you might be your biggest critic. You might be the reason you're being held back. The battle's in the mind. And God wants to do a work today in saying, stop comparing to other people. Stop listening to other people. You are not who people say you are. You are who God says you are. God's promise. You see, Jesus Christ died for your sins, and he rose from the dead so that you can get rid of all your regrets and all your resentments, and you can cast them on him. And believe me, it's not easy to do. See, it's easy at the start to go, oh, I got this new life in Christ. But then we start to go, and we get this zeal, and then we get hit upside the head by people, right? And we start to be defined by what people say. And now we can't just go into battle anymore because we got fear. And the way you overcome it is what? Concentrating on God's promise. This guy has kept God's promise for 45 years. That's what we need. Okay, the story goes on to say this. Verse 11. I am still as strong today. Here's how I know he got it. I am still as strong today as Moses sent me out. I am just as vigorous to go out to battle now as I was then. Circle this, battle now. Can I tell you what we're facing? The battle is now. Too many people think the battle's over. See, I fought my battle, and now it's time to pass on the baton. I'm afraid you're missing the point here. You see, my time is past, and I think people have told me my time is past. Your time ain't past. You see, some of us have had success. You see, the greatest enemy of today's success isn't just other people's. It's yesterday's, what we used to. I used to, and I did these things in the glory days, you get it, and the battle's behind us, but it's not the enemy behind us that's going to kill us. It's the enemy that's in front of us. You don't believe that? Try it in your car. Just go out, please don't do this. Go out and drive your car and just stare at the rearview mirror. I can learn a lot from the past, where I've been. And I'm just going to focus the rest of my life on the past. And just drive as fast as you can. Let me tell you something. The reason why some of us aren't driving, I can tell you, because we're looking in the past, and we know we can't drive forward as long as we're looking at the past. So what we're doing is we're not going to hit anything. We're just going to stop and look in the rearview mirror and learn everything we can from what's behind us. But the battle's not behind us. It's ahead of us. And somebody told you that your battle time is done and it's somebody else's turn. But it's not. The battle is now. The battle is now. The greatest enemy of today's success is yesterday's success. And too many people are looking either in past failures, but also in past success. We're stuck. This is what we did. By the way, the good old days weren't as good as they're claimed to be, okay? I'm telling you, really. They're not. I was there. I was there as a kid, and I'm telling you, it wasn't. We had just as many problems back then as we have now. There's nothing new under the sun. We face the same things and the same issues that we have in the church today. I remember 20 years ago when I was at community church as an associate pastor, we were facing them then, and we made just as many mistakes, if not more. Don't do that. We're just smarter now. We see it different. And the other thing is this. Stop doing this thing. The grass is greener on the other side, okay? Let me tell you about that. It's not. Trust me, I associate with a lot of pastors, and we share a lot of stuff, and what I found is everybody's messed up. And if you think the grass is greener on the other side, believe me, it's just because it's over the septic tank, okay? Telling you, write that down. It's true. It's true. You go over there and you're going to find out real fast. You're like, oh, wow, it is, right? Everybody's got problems. Stop thinking that way. God has a battle for you, and it's now. It's not in the past. The greatest battles for the church is ahead of us, not behind us. It's you as the church, no matter how old you are. You see, somebody told you, you can't serve God when you're past 40, right? You can't serve God when you're past 50 or 60 or 70 or 80. Who told you that? Who told you that? God's been prepping you for this time, for this reason. FYI, Caleb was the oldest one left. I'm 85 years old. There's no one left but me and Joshua. That's why he's talking to Joshua. We're the last ones that know what it's like to be slaves in Egypt. Nobody else has felt the pain that we do. We know what it was like to have taskmasters. We know what it was like to see the power of God move. There's nothing wrong with the past. Just don't get stuck there. And he could have said, well, fine then. You just don't even care about the oldest leader in Israel. And you know what would have happened? He would have never taken this mountain. He would have never done this battle, which is right ahead of him. You see, they need you. They need you in more ways than you can ever imagine. For this reason right here, Joshua 14, verse 12. Now give me this hill country. Now give me this hill country promised me that day. You yourself heard that the Anakites were there and the cities were large and fortified. I want to pause there. It's so cool to say hill country. How many people love going to the mountains? I do. Let me tell you when you don't love going to the mountains. When you're getting ready to battle and the people are uphill. He's not talking about Smith Mountain Lake where we're going to go ride some jet skis and enjoy the mountains. That's not it. This is the hill country that says they have the high ground. The demonic warriors have the high ground, and we're going to go run them off. Let me tell you something. I don't think there was any hesitation for Joshua to go, you want to go do it, Caleb? Mm-hmm. Great, because none of us want to go, right? But it takes somebody like Caleb to do this, and I want you to pay attention because he's going, hey, this is what God said. This is our moment. This is my moment, Joshua. I know God's called you to lead, but this one is the time. You need to let me do this one because nobody else is going to get what I get about this. Here's what he says. This is how I know that he wasn't stuck in regret and resentment. This is why I know he wasn't just an arrogant old man. Is this next statement. But the Lord helping me. You want to underline that? I will. You want to underline that today? That'll be a great life verse for somebody. The Lord helping me, I will drive them out just as he said. The Lord helping me. If he didn't say that, then he would just be an arrogant old man. But he got it. He went, God, I know what my purpose is. I know I'm not Joshua, and that's okay. He was very comfortable being who he was, as you need to be. God made you who you are. Overcome fear. Let me tell you something. There was no more fear than the battle that was coming on top of that mountain. And the oldest warrior in the land said, it's my turn. Oh, the young people are afraid. They don't even know. They didn't know. They didn't get to go 40 years ago, right? 45 years ago. They didn't get to go. Now, they had seen God's battles. They had seen the Battle of Jericho. They had seen a lot of things, but they ain't seen nothing like this one. And the old man stepped up and said, it needs to be me. Because I know what God can do. You overcome fear by focusing on victory in God. That's very important. Not focusing on victory. Not focusing on success. Not focusing on your plan. But focusing on victory in God, because God is your victory. See, you don't learn how to walk on water. You don't learn how to part the Red Sea. That's not how it works. You depend on God. That's why I know. You see, he got it because, see, this man, he was there when God parted the Red Sea. You see, this man, he was there when God delivered them. He was there when they brought him back. He was there for every battle. He was there when they prayed for 400 years. He was a child of the 400-year slaves that says, it's me, I'm the oldest, and God has kept me around for one reason and one reason alone, so I can stand on this mountain and show you not to be afraid, but to trust what God says. That's what he's doing. And we need that. You see, what we need is we need some people that have been hurt by life. It doesn't matter how old you are. But we need some people that are old and bold, believe me. See? Some people that have experienced life, whether you're 18 or 80, it doesn't matter. But if you've experienced those pains in life, we need you on the battlefield because here's the problem. The problem is the young or the people that have never had pain don't know what it's like to get hurt. And when they face the Anakites, they're about to face something they've never done before. And see, what they're doing is they're strategizing, they're planning, they're depending a lot in themselves. See? They're depending on their own strength. See, some of us have done that before. And we've seen big churches, and I've seen big churches die. And I've seen big things, and I've seen the Holy Spirit not be part. And I've seen big things, and I've seen moral failures. You see, I've seen some things, and some of you guys have seen beyond what I have seen. And what I'm telling you is we need some people on the field that go, hey, it's not just overzealous, enthusiastic passion that comes from me, but somebody goes, I've felt the pain, and I know what it's like to not be selected. And I know what it's like to be in Egypt and wondering where the next meal is going to come from, or wondering if the Egyptians are going to kill us, or wondering if God's ever going to answer our prayers. And it needs to be me so they can see what God can do. And he's going, I'm going to stand on this mountain, and something is going to happen. Old and bold. I want to share just something with you before we go any further, and that's before we end. And that's, for me, this is one of the messages of my life. Before ever starting a church, I mean, back in 2000, the year 2000, wow, it's a long time now. I had a dream to plant a church. I was 28 years old, and I had some mentors in my life, and I had decided that I was going to make a bold move in my life. And so I was going to move to Dallas, Texas, even though I hate the Dallas Cowboys, but that's okay. That's a whole different issue. But I was going to go there. I could do everything but the team, but that's okay. And and so we went to Dallas, Texas, and I went to this church called Stonebriar Community Church, where a guy that when I got saved as a teenager, I started listening to a pastor on the radio named Chuck Swindoll. And he's absolutely awesome. Some of you guys know him, some of you guys don't. But it transformed my life, and I love the way he teaches, and I still love the way he teaches. I listen to him all the time. And I had decided, hey, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go and I'm going to get my master's degree in Dallas, Texas at Dallas Theological Seminary, and I'm going to attend Stonebriar Community Church, and I'm going to be on staff at Stonebriar Community Church. And I taught at Stonebriar Community Church, and I got a job there as a loan officer that I could move there if I wanted to. I had no money. I had no plan. This was really young and dumb. I was just going to bolt out because I went, hey, God, I'm having faith, and I'm just going to step out in impulsiveness. That was not God's plan for my life. I went there. I met Chuck Swindoll. It was absolutely awesome. I sat in the message, and the message that day was called Old and Bold. I was bold, but I wasn't old, you know. And I sat there, and I listened to him, and I thought, well, that's a good message. I sat through it twice because he had 2 services, and so I sat twice, and he said the same thing twice, and I was like, that's really awesome. I took all these notes, and I took it home not really realizing what it was. And then I came home. We're all ready to pack our bags, and then our lives fell apart shortly after that. I've told you about that before, right? And what happens? Then we go down a path for 10 years of horribleness. I didn't go to Dallas Theological Seminary. I went to a different seminary, seminary of pain. And that's when this message started to make sense. See? This is the message of our life. Old and bold. Now you understand. You know, like you're going to feel the pain. You got to understand, because when you step out, and for a long time, there's just bitterness and anger and resentment and rage and all these things about, God, how could you do this? Why would you set me up? And I wanted to do that, and other guys have got to do it, but I don't get to do it. And why would you do that to me? I think maybe the same thing's true for Caleb. And it became, this message, believe it or not, is at the apex of why we started this church in the first place. Because out of that pain, I went, there's other people like me There's other people that need something other than just a programmatic church. I got a degree, but I got it through a different avenue. I didn't get to go to a great seminary. I got to do it different. But I did do it. And God was there for me. And God blessed me. And you might have a story that's far worse than the one that I have. It's not about how bad. It's about God shows you something in the pain. Don't miss it. That's why he needs his oldest warriors up there, because overzealous young people are going to jump out in impulse because they don't realize life can hurt. And there comes battles in life, and in the church, here's what I know. There's a battle that we're facing, and we need the oldest warriors to stand up. And you got to get rid of all this stuff, or you're not going to be able to go. Let me tell you what this story is really all about, and then we'll be done. Joshua chapter 14, verse 13. Here's how it ends. Then Joshua blessed Caleb, son of Jephunneh, and gave him Hebron as his inheritance. You don't see this as funny, but I do, because I can see Joshua standing there and the old guy at 85 saying, hey, you know that hill country that you've not been doing anything with? That's my inheritance, and I'm going to be the one to drive the Anakites out, me and my family. Okay, you are blessed, brother. Go ahead. That's what this means. I mean, that's pretty funny, right? It's like, you mean the thing that caused us to march around, this right here is why we marched around the wilderness for 40 years. Did you understand that? This is the fear of all fears. And we need the old man. We need the man who can stand up and say, I felt everything God can throw, and I'm not afraid. You know why? Because God is with me. Not because I'm so great. See, the person that's never felt pain goes, oh yeah, oh, I can do it. Oh, I can do it. Dummy, right? And if he had done that, hey, punch me in the gut, watch this. No, it ain't that. It's, I have seen what God can do, and I'm the last one left. And they need the greatest person of faith up here, and that's me. This time, Joshua, you sit this one out. And he's like, okay, you're blessed. Okay. Verse 14, so Hebron has belonged. You know what we're missing? The battle. I don't even know what happened in the battle up there on that mountain. The greatest battle of Israel, and here's how it ends. So Hebron has belonged to Caleb, son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, ever since. Pay attention, because he followed the Lord, the God of Israel, wholeheartedly. Let me tell you something. You can't follow God wholeheartedly when you're full of regret. You can't follow God wholeheartedly when you're full of resentment. You can't follow God wholeheartedly when you're comparing yourself to someone else. You can't follow God wholeheartedly when you're afraid. You follow God wholeheartedly, you're going to take the land. You're going to take the biggest hill that there is. Okay. This is the verse. If I could get a tattoo, I'd get this. I forgot my mom's here. Sorry, Mom. I'm not really going to do that because I keep changing my mind, so I'm not. But this is a life's verse. I think if I could make a life's verse, I think it would be this one. If I could make a verse for our church, it would be this one. Hebron used to be called Kiriath Arba, after Arba, who was the greatest man among the Anakites. Then the land had rest from war. That's your life's verse? Yeah. Can I tell you why? Just one thing I'd like to get tattooed. Used to be. If I could, you know, I want to even change our mission and vision statement now. You know what we need to be called? Used to be. Has been. This is what we used to be. That might not mean anything to you. For hundreds of years, this place was known for the Anakites, the giant Nephilim warriors that were demonically possessed. I believe it with all my heart. This is what the name of this land was. But when Caleb went up there and followed the Lord his God wholeheartedly, it used to be called that. And now it's called something else. To this day, it's called something else. It will be his inheritance forever. You see, the 85-year-old man wasn't there just so he could go, look what I did, look what I did. That's the young guy. The old guy wasn't doing that. He was far past what happens to him. He was there to bring glory to God and say, you know what? This spot right here is going to be claimed for God. The old man. This spot belongs to God, not Arba, not the Anakites, not the reason why we marched for 40 years and all of my friends died. You know, that's a hard thing. Maybe you didn't understand that. All of his friends are dead. What has he got left? My kids. And I want them to see Dad. I want them to see Granddad. I want them to see great-dad, Granddad stand here with a sword in my hand and show them what God can do. And this place to this day in the nation of Israel is Caleb's inheritance forever. You get it? Can I tell you what New Branch Community Church is about? It used to be. You see, when I look around at this church, let me tell you what I see. I see an impossible church. I can say this honestly. With impossible people. Your pastor should never have been a pastor. Your worship leader right now, Frenchie, should never have been a worship leader. Not now, not at 60-some years old. I could go around this room, and I'll look out, and I can say that to him because he's okay with me putting him on the spot. I won't do the rest. Let me tell you what I see. I see people who were alcoholics. I see people who were drug addicts. I see people who could never darken the door of a church. I see people that could never serve God. I see people who were outcast. I see people who have been sick, and yet they're still serving. You see, what do you think? You get a pass because you're sick? I'm not being funny, but I'm saying here's the problem is some of us old warriors are, and I'm not those. You are. And here's the thing. Some of you are going to sit it out. You've been sitting it out long enough. God has called you to this. Let me tell you what God can do. Anything. When you believe. You know, I've been reading in the Gospels, and every time, you know what Jesus says, and it's confused me always. Your faith has made you healed. Now, it's not you. It's who you placed your faith in for what? And your motivation. That's what we understand. You see, what you need to understand is this, is whatever you're facing in your life, it could be a used to be. It could be a used to be because God can break every chain. Today in my quiet time, I couldn't believe this verse came up because it fits this to a T. It said, they said, well, how is this possible? And he said, well, with humans, this is impossible. But with God, all things are possible. You know what I see in this room? What God can do. And you know what's going to take us to a whole nother level is if we embrace what we learn from this. And we used to be that, but we're this. Some of us let some things get back in, right? Because life tends to hurt. It's like I was following, and now some things hurt me. Some things made me regretful. Some things made me resentful. Some things made me afraid. I've been comparing. And today's the day you get to lay it down, and it used to be because we need to stand on that mountain and do it, right? God has given us Zunai. All joking aside. All joking aside. God has given us Windsor. God has given us this. Don't you sit it out, okay? Somebody today is going, I've never experienced God, but you can today. You could used to be. Whatever it is that's holding you back from God. Please don't miss this because it will be the greatest passion lesson that will keep passion in your life forever. Let's stand for prayer.